Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of video game news. Episode 2, although on the episode numbers in particular, I am going to probably not stick with episode numbers and have actual dates instead going forward. Starting a little bit late today. Things are still going in the right direction with this minor emergency, but there's just a lot more demand on my time and just weirdness in general as far as interruptions. I literally was interrupted last night playing Fallout New Vegas by a fake ghost call, just phantom call from, I imagine, my cell phone provider messing up. I suppose there is a question here. If I'm going to be playing considerably less of Yu-Gi-Oh, which is probably how this is going to go, will I not even get the dual pass done? That's certainly a thought to keep an eye out for. At a certain point, I guess if I am not even getting the dual pass done, we should consider that. And then I also should consider what day of the week should I open 10 of these legacy packs, because I won't be earning enough cards really to open a new 10 legacy pack every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday that I stream. For the catch-up section, I am still playing Fallout New Vegas. Probably about 25 hours into the game, I made it to New Vegas, to the Strip. So here's an event that has just ended, which probably could have won that pack had I put more time into it. So we'll just play ranked today. Yeah, getting into the New Vegas Strip in Fallout New Vegas creates kind of a major problem. First of all, I was there without really any quests, so I just kind of walked through the whole place and then left, and didn't even go inside any of the casinos. But second of all, there is on the Strip a topless dancing lady who has like black tape over her nipples as in X form, in the shape of X's, and you just really can't do that 25 hours into a game. Fallout New Vegas already has too much cussing. There's literally a quest that I did between this recording and the last, where one of the soldiers, who is female, was literally raped. They just used the rape word as part of the quest. This is a big quest. This person has been raped. They need to seek mental treatment for it. The theming is fine, but man, that is Obsidian certainly going a lot more hardcore than I think Fallout 3 or Fallout 4 ever would really go. Despite the fact that Fallout 4 starts with a child being kidnapped. But yeah, it just feels too mature. And there really needed to be what I call the kiss-off, which you see in movies. Like the first 5 minutes of movies, you'll have extreme amounts of cussing, or violence, or gore, or blood, or nudity, or sex, whatever. You'll have kind of a high amount of that in the first 5 minutes for movies, so if anybody's going to get offended and want their money back from the movie theater, they'll leave in the first 5 minutes. Which movie theaters would much prefer that than someone asking for their money back 2 hours into a 2 hour and 20-minute movie. So yeah, Fallout New Vegas has several elements it needs to have at the very beginning of the game, or in kind of a tease of the game, just so you know it's going to be there. In comparison, from what I remember in Fallout 3, the only real sexuality was that there was one character that had like a harem. But that was pretty much it. Like they weren't particularly dressed in a naked style or way. They weren't dancing or moving around in a particularly seductive way, which it does certainly show that they wasted probably some resources animating movements and dances for the female characters in Fallout New Vegas when there's just a lot of characters. They could have used better walking and running animations, and the game itself would benefit from having running in the game at all for the main player. I got a secondary companion, which is, it's interesting that I got a secondary companion, but it also kind of highlights a problem with the Bethesda games in particular, because it really should make a lot of sense that you could have an entire team on your side as far as secondary companions, like you would in basically any JRPG. But yeah, Fallout 3, very specifically, you could only have one companion, and I'm not 100% sure that the only reason I was able to get a secondary companion is because Eddie, my first companion, might be a DLC companion that has been added extra. And this secondary companion's name is Veronica and is voiced by Felicia Day, and it definitely seems like some of the other characters are voiced by another very noticeable voice actor, Cameo, which that screams that they wasted their time and money hiring celebrities, and that would be very much in line with Bethesda. Fallout New Vegas uses the Gamebryo engine, whereas Fallout 4, Skyrim, Fallout 76 all use a modified version of the Gamebryo engine called the Creation Engine. Starfield uses the Creation Engine 2.0. None of these engines are good. None of these, in my opinion, stand up to what should be happening by modern games, and I really do have to kind of question if there is any extra value in Bethesda using the Creation Engine version 2 instead of just abandoning that and making a Unreal Engine game. A big part of that, certainly the take from that, is that maybe the Gamebryo engine and its derivative, the Creation Engine, were powerful enough to make giant open world games in the past, whereas other engines were not capable of really doing that. But by 2024 standards, we've seen plenty of games with giant open world environments, plenty of games that don't need a unique special engine to handle that. There's some other elements like that other games have introduced that would make sense in Bethesda games, such as finding specific spots where you would climb a tower and be able to see more and reveal more on the map. Adjusting how much dialogue happens, having all of the dialogue happen via somebody walking up to you and talking while you maybe are shooting enemies at the same time, like Bioshock 1, where you get audio recordings instead of text messages. But yeah, particularly getting into the Strip, I just can't imagine that you could suggest anybody under the age of 16 to play Fallout New Vegas, even if you were alright with them watching the Fallout Amazon Prime series, which in fairness I think you probably would be alright with a 14 or 15 year old watching the Amazon Prime series. On that same aspect, I really question whether anybody would really enjoy Fallout New Vegas playing it after watching the Amazon Prime series. I just think you'd probably be expecting a much more interesting experience for every hour, since every episode is about an hour in the Prime series and there's something fairly interesting happening there. And the conversion from what is an action TV series that very much ignores the role-playing elements to playing Fallout New Vegas, which is a role-playing game that very much overemphasizes the role-playing elements. You can really get down to the basic stuff that everybody who's ever played a Bethesda game knows. You get over encumbered way too much. There's way too much vendor trash. There's systems where you can pick up items and drag them to a different point that is really pointless and just shouldn't exist, other than to allow people to steal in weird, silly ways, and there's just not enough justification for that. You could probably fix half of the crashes in every Bethesda game if you just locked items into a specific XYZ coordinate, and then when you picked up the item it would disappear from that coordinate, or if you purchased the item it would disappear from the shelf behind the shopkeeper at that coordinate. There is something extremely weird about the factions in Fallout New Vegas, where the New California Republic is a little bit imperialist and seems like they might on some occasions commit some war crimes, but then there's no way you could possibly side with Kaiser/Caesar's Legion, who are straight up crucifying people and taking slaves and attacking and doing horrific things in every single instance that you see them. There probably are some other factions that will show up, but I don't know how big of a role they really are going to play. Yes, there's some small amount of Brotherhood of Steel people, and there are raiding parties. But I imagine without a mod, there's no way you could start a new game plus in a different starting location with a different group of people, a different faction. And even if you were going to try to side with some of these smaller, like, raiding party factions, you're going to have to play the game so incredibly evilly. You're going to have to just be such an evil player. It's going to be quite the moral role-playing dilemma, which some people certainly embrace that. That being said, because there's so much vendor trash, if you were to play as a bad guy and just go into entire cities and massacre people, not try and do any of the quests, you wouldn't get enough experience, and you wouldn't get enough caps. Fallout New Vegas in particular feels like a game that once you get into that end game, it's going to want you to have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of caps. Just a really high amount of currency for a Fallout game. And yeah, I just don't think you're going to get that much without eventually leveling up. I'm only at like level 14, but I feel like I'm probably close to 2/3 of the way done with the entire map. Unless the map changes significantly, which is a possibility. So yeah, I definitely also am hurting myself a little bit because there is clearly an attempt in New Vegas that was not done in Fallout 3 to have the thirst meter play a role and to have bullet scarcity play a role, and neither one of those are really happening. That being said, if I didn't have two companions fighting by my side, there's a lot of enemies that would totally wreck me. And so I have no idea how I would have been able to level up. The vast majority of your experience is from doing quests, so either I've missed a whole bunch of quests, which is a possibility, or the game really wants you to walk up and down the same road several times to grind out things. And it's not like playing on a higher difficulty would give you extra XP for the extra challenge. There are still elements in New Vegas, like other Fallout games, where unless there really is a default New Game Plus, which I'm not sure there is, there may be a mod that gives you New Game Plus, you're just not going to have your hacking and your lockpicking at 100%, so there are just going to be doors you can't get behind, but not enough of them to justify running around the map twice and unlocking the doors once you get your lockpicking up to 100 and your hacking up to 100. And there's never anything of any real value behind most doors and most locks. If there's a quest item, you might find it in a safe every now and then, but usually that means you will have either hacking or lockpicking high enough to accomplish that requirement, or some other way of finishing the quest. There's a lot of random houses in some of the outskirts of towns, and not a lot of motivation to go into the random houses. Although I did go into one random shack and it turned out that there was actually a storyline quest element there, and so I was rewarded for being thorough. But it's really difficult around the New Vegas area to be thorough. There's just a lot of buildings and a lot of places to walk. I wouldn't be surprised if there is still a significant number of quests. There almost certainly has to be. There seems to be maybe 2 vaults, one of which I think has been converted into a casino. It may not actually be a vault at all. And that may be the only 2 vaults in the whole New Vegas area. So yeah, I keep grinding along on New Vegas, and I'm just not really seeing anything that feels good enough to keep someone's attention between the end of season 1 of the Amazon show and potentially a season 2 of the Amazon show. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to hear stories when the 2nd season comes out around how almost nobody who watched the Amazon show went to play a Fallout game who hadn't already owned or played the Fallout games. That's probably not the case, but wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly how it goes down. Now there's a BioShock Netflix show that's already been announced, and I imagine we're getting closer to the release of that, so that'll be an interesting comparison as far as apples to apples. I also saw Amazon Prime got a Japanese show. It looks like a live action thing based off of some manga or anime that I've never heard of, called, roughly translated, I imagine you'd call it Devil's Game. But yeah, it's just subtitled, it's live action, it looks interesting enough, and that's certainly not something I've seen Amazon Prime really try. Amazon Prime also has at least the first half of season 3 of Clarkson's Farm, and they've gotten some of the older, by a couple years, British shows, like the remake, revitalization of Crystal Maze, and a couple seasons of 8 out of 10 cats, which that's really weird because they're 8 out of 10 cats is a panel show talking about what people are talking about that specific week. It loses most of its value if you miss it by even a week, let alone entire years. But yeah, I'm thinking Amazon Prime is maybe stepping up its loadout of content, probably to balance out the fact that they've added commercials to a lot of things. I wouldn't be surprised if some of this is also shifting things that would have been on Freebie back into being Amazon Prime, since Freebie is also commercial focused. Hulu, on the other hand, doesn't seem like it's got much of anything new, and yeah, I have stopped looking and stopped paying for Netflix. So Netflix still feels to me like it would be a more interesting lineup, just a little too expensive. Well, after the whole crackdown on the password sharing, you have to kind of reevaluate at that point. I don't think this card's gonna work, so this might be a great time to surrender. And anyways, we're supposed to be doing news faster here, more and more. Let's go ahead and activate this. Just get rid of things. GameDeveloper.com here says that Gray Zone Warfare has reached over 500,000 sales in 2 days. This title has been updated though. Yeah, on the 3rd, so it hasn't been updated since then. One of the things to do here is definitely to get a feel of when is the best day to go into more detail versus when is a good day to not go into detail and just cover the news as quickly as possible. When is a good day to possibly play some extra Yu-Gi-Oh! Versus days to not play Yu-Gi-Oh! Kind of almost never going to be a good day. I probably am not anywhere close to finishing Fallout New Vegas. So I'd imagine it's kind of pointless to start to speculate about what the next game is I should play. It is much more of a case where I should think about the scheduling of other content that I've already made. Like, really at any point here I could get a burst of just about 200 subscribers and then I would be over the 1,000 subscriber threshold. I still probably would need to triple my watch time. And certainly we're in an odd position now that we're doing video game news and just describing it as video game news instead of having Yu-Gi-Oh! Bring in views. So yeah, if anything, I'm probably slowing things down a little bit. But that's probably the right move too, because while Yu-Gi-Oh! Was bringing in views, it was not really bringing in watch time. of this is gonna work. So I'm gonna lose. Microsoft says it has grown its support of veterans, military service members, and their families. Let's see what they really are doing. Reviews a year partnership with the USO. Call of Duty Endowment announces new operator packs. Microsoft supports veterans, transitioning service members, and new military spouses with free technical career training through MSAA. So, 2 of these are Xbox related. One of these is a technical training certificate for working in IT, which only a portion of people in the military are going to want to seek post-military careers in IT. Now, what is interesting about this is there was another point I was going to make, which is May the 4th happened, and there's frankly a decent number of video game companies willing to celebrate May the 4th more than some more important holidays, for sure. And I could see certainly a reason why you would do that. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to celebrate a Star Wars Day, because nobody's going to inherently have a problem with you celebrating Star Wars. These pictures are definitely focusing on showing a military that is more female based and perhaps more tech literate, which, yeah, I still think a significant amount of the US military is male grunts shooting bullets at people on the front lines. I don't think we've gotten to the point where that is completely eliminated. I do think there is a potential future where you could easily have a country with one human being being the only citizen of that country, and him just having access to a lot of military drones and missiles and rockets and bombs. Like, you really don't need a high citizenship if you don't need a standing military of humans, and you really don't need a standing military of humans if you can defend your borders and defend your claims on resources simply through automated drones or remotely controlled drones. And as much as the military loves to increase their use of drones, drone strikes are less accurate by far as citizen casualties. They're not really counting than having a human being having to be the person that pulls the trigger. Of course, Microsoft certainly could be accused of helping gamify the military, and helping propagandize the military with their Call of Duty series. Of course, they're making money on it, so they're not going to stop. And so there are some deeper issues to discuss there. Weirdly, though, it doesn't feel like Microsoft is even supporting veteran families or military families particularly well. You would think you have a picture here, so why are we not giving military families like free copies of Minecraft? Keep the kids busy. That's something you could do, certainly. Or military discounts on buying video games anyways. That's something they could do, and I'm not sure they're really doing any of that. I'm not really sure what they're doing at all with the USO. This year we're proud to deepen our commitment as primary gaming partner. The military in particular has been a major saving of the Xbox. Like, that being said, it is also the Xbox's always online desires that lost them a lot of their military followers and fans, because if you're in some secret base somewhere, you can't connect to the internet, or if you're on a mobile operating base somewhere, you're not likely going to have a good enough internet to be always connected just to play on an Xbox. There might even be a little bit of xenophobia in it, in that Microsoft, being a mostly United States company, making a console is preferred over Sony, being a Japanese company, or mostly Japanese company. Although I would definitely think that if my estimations as far as the fan base shifting over to PlayStation are accurate, I imagine the numbers are similar in the military as they are outside the military. It's kind of crazy to have the official Xbox podcast just right here on the same level as Xbox Game Pass. Let's move on. Godot retweeted this person working on a Godot engine game using, what is this called? The Clockwork? Little do-it-yourself computer, I would assume. I'd assume this has something equivalent to a Raspberry Pi in it, if not a Raspberry Pi Zero built into it. And I could see, if you are programming things, having a full keyboard might be helpful. This is clearly a very, very silly way to try and get any work done. And as much as I would hate to suggest a laptop, I think a laptop is probably the appropriate professional way to be on an airplane and continue to accomplish something over something like this. Even the Steam Deck, which would be my secondary suggestion, probably doesn't make enough sense to do a Steam Deck just if you're going to be programming a lot. It would make sense if you already had a Steam Deck and then you just had like a Bluetooth keyboard or some kind of keyboard mount, which I haven't really seen anything that turns a Steam Deck into more of a laptop. But yeah, this is very, very silly. Story Kitchen, which is a company I've never heard of, has teamed with DreamWorks Animation to adopt video games into film and TV. So clearly we are into a new fad of doing this. I would have to really research what was the last thing DreamWorks even animated. Already Story Kitchen is working on a live-action Dredge film and Vampire Survivors animated series. They apparently were working on It Takes Two for Amazon and Streets of Rage movie and a Netflix Tomb Raider anime, which Netflix loves to call things anime when they really aren't. We can also expect a Bioshock, a Days Gone, and a Gravity Rush, and a Ghost of Tsushima movie. And then a Gears of War, Grounded, Among Us, God of War, and The Medium TV series, I believe. And you have to assume that at least a good chunk of these will not succeed. Although, who knows? Standards may just be so low now that if the options are you're going to either get nothing or a terrible NCS spinoff once again on NBC, ABC, CBS, or Fox, maybe video games have a slightly higher quality than that. Although I think we also are going to run out of games that are relatively recent that have decent stories, and once you start trying to think of older games with decent stories, you're going to really fail to find a lot of them. Moving on, Beat Saber is going to be dropping MetaQuest support in November, which Beat Saber being the #1 game for VR. That certainly highlights that MetaQuest 1 is probably close to dead, if not completely dead. And yeah, I imagine any early adopter who bought a MetaQuest 1 is not going to be happy about that. Hades 2 is now available in early access, so the hype up to Hades 2 can now be replaced with the hype for Hades 2. And then this is the biggest news story for today and for the past few days is Sony. Sony being the publisher, I think, has to take almost 100% of the blame here. Because unless the contracts were written very weirdly, it's the publishing company that's going to make all the decisions. So Sony released Helldivers 2 on Steam, and for quote-unquote technical reasons, they did not require PlayStation Network accounts at the beginning. Helldivers 2 has become incredibly popular. I think it only sells for $40, which probably helps its sales. It is rumored to be the biggest game to sell this year, and that the PlayStation version alone would have been the biggest selling game this year so far. That's ignoring the Steam sales, which are probably fairly high, if not higher than the PlayStation sales. But yeah, it had been going on with a lot of fandom growing for several months, and then Sony came in, and again we have to blame the publisher on this, and is now announcing that everybody on Steam will have to have a PlayStation Network account to use it. Now, notably, a side point on this is that Helldivers 2, again, blame the publisher for this, was listed and available for sale in a lot of countries where the PlayStation Network does not exist. And so, in their steps, in their original steps to demand that everybody have a PlayStation Network account, there were going to be people in some countries, let's just pick Spain, whether that's an accurate country or not. People in Spain would then have purchased the game in this theoretical scenario and been unable to play it. Valve has kept their mouth shut and simply just authorized refunds to a lot of players who have played hundreds of hours. Now, I did hear someone phrase that as they are being extremely generous in refunding people that they don't really have to refund because they played so much. And honestly, I have to is a bad phrase to use. Like, morally, I would say they have to. If the game has changed significantly after the fact and you can no longer play it, I think you have to give a refund at that point. Legally, I don't care if they're legally required to or not, but morally, I would say you have to if the game changes that drastically and potentially it becomes unplayable, or if the demands to continue playing it are just unreasonable. And to a lot of people, it is unreasonable to have to create or log into a PlayStation Network account, particularly knowing that the PlayStation Network accounts have been hacked multiple times. And there's just no benefit, or at least originally there was going to be no benefit to the player for logging into a PSN account. Seems like maybe now they're going to give a free cape to people who link their PSN account from Steam. But the last time they gave away a free cape, also, everybody hated it and would kick those players out of their groups. So I'm not sure that that even has been announced, and that isn't really just a meme post I saw. So yeah, again, you have to blame Sony as a publisher on that. Like, they should have never listed the game in non-PSN accounts if they had really, in non-PSN countries, if they had really never had a plan on letting this game not require a PSN. And now you run into the gamers winning, which is always great news to hear, even though I'm sure there'll be some mainstream video game journalists that somehow twist it into being a terrible thing, that gamers rise up and demand that they be treated decently. But you still don't look good as Sony now reversing the account linking requirement, because it certainly still shows that they want to do that. It shows that they're just going to try some other way. Now, I will say also, we talked about just a few minutes ago how Xbox wanted an always online DRM account checking, and Xbox was forced to drop that as an idea, and they still really have sneaked it in. All the consoles have. It's not like you could go 90 days without connecting to the internet and playing a game on most consoles. I don't think you could do that anyways. They've just made it more hidden and less arduous as far as how often it calls home to check if a console still has the rights to play certain games. But yeah, it definitely feels like Sony will push this, and now every single game that comes to Steam is going to have that hanging over its head if Sony is the publisher, as far as will they eventually demand a PlayStation Network account. One game has already come out and said that at least some of the content as far as online play will require a PlayStation Network account. This all screams to me not Jim Ryan's doing, but the new Japanese CEO's way of doing things, which is to probably not really understand the situation at all, or not care to understand the situation at all, and to really just pass down rulings and edicts from above as to what he wants or what he thinks would sound good and make the shareholders happy. There is definitely an alternate universe version of this encounter in which Sony would have reacted much faster, instead of waiting a couple days to see if it blows over and waiting a couple days to see how terribly reviewed their games on Steam will get. There is also a possibility this will just give Sony an excuse to double down and make even fewer games available on Steam, or make no more games available on Steam, which that could be a negative outcome from this, but in the end, that may just be how this all has to go. Maybe Sony will just have to fail miserably and never bring its games to Steam if they're not willing to bring their games to Steam without major caveats and requirements. In a lot of ways, forced account linking is just a slight step away from de novo DRM. It's something that the gamers don't want, something the gamers don't benefit from. Yeah, there's just really no positivity on any side that can come out from this situation. 100%, you have to just blame the publisher, because if it was the Arrowhead CEO saying things are making decisions, then Sony as a publisher should have been able to step in and said, no, we're in charge, Arrowhead CEO, keep your mouth shut. If anything, the Arrowhead CEO has helped the situation, not hurt it. Meanwhile, there's nothing new to say about Stellar Blade. But there is definitely a pattern here of Sony being crappy. Allowing Shift Up to claim the game was going to be uncensored, then literally a couple days later, or the next day, even censoring Stellar Blade, and then moving on to the next controversy. Almost certainly we'll see another controversy in the next few weeks from Sony. Microsoft benefits the most from this, and Nintendo benefits the most from this because they can just sit back and avoid creating their own controversies, and they will come out smelling rosy. In the continuing Minecraft #SharpYourWorld advertisement, I am incredibly uncertain as far as what the audience is that they're targeting. Seemingly this video here on Minecraft is that they hired a Japanese manga artist who looks like her style would be more robot girls from like the 90s to have some kind of Minecraft themed giant poster wall scroll. And so she's throwing in creepers here and there and squids and things like that, and she's got a pixely axe, but the vast majority of this art is literally just her her art style. Like it just doesn't really connect in any way to actual Minecraft. And so yeah, I have to really ask, who is the audience there? Who's the target audience? Are you trying to get Japanese people into Minecraft? Maybe there isn't as many Japanese people in Minecraft as there could be, but are you uniquely trying to get manga fans, Japanese manga fans into Minecraft? I just don't see a real connection there. If anything, you look at this art and it's just not promising what you actually would see, and it seems pretty obvious that this manga artist themselves has never played Minecraft, and that's why they were given a few key things to add to the art, and that was it, instead of trying to animate everything in that blocky Minecraft style, which really wouldn't work for a manga art style. But yeah, are you trying to get edgelord teenager kids who are into manga into Minecraft? I don't think that's going to work. So who are you advertising to? The previous advertisement, well, here's another one. Seems like maybe what they've done is they've just encouraged people around the world to make advertisements for them. So here you have more of a pencil artist Western person drawing something in Minecraft. Then the Minecraft Japan advertisement. Seems like they are just throwing money away. Here you have another Reshape Your World. See, when Lego did a similar advertisement campaign, that too didn't make any sense. See, I don't even know if I would call this Minecraft style. That doesn't even really look very Minecrafty. But yeah, here, this is clearly a more professional commercial that we talked about in the previous stream, and yeah, it's just makes no sense as far as who they are advertising to. It looks like you're advertising Minecraft to a bunch of adults who would have to probably already know what Minecraft is for this to make sense or work. So I have to assume what's going on here is that Minecraft has no idea what to do to advertise to try to grow its audience. I imagine its audience is as saturated as possible. So I did want to highlight here you have Daedalic Entertainment, which I feel like this Daedalic Wars image probably was made several years ago, and so they're just reusing it for May the 4th be with you. which notably it's worth pointing out though that Daedalic is on its last legs. Tencent acquired them. They were the ones that made the awful Golem game, and it will be extremely questionable if they can even just survive long enough to not be put out of business to make just what their bread and butter was, which would be another point-and-click adventure game. And even in that, I'm not sure they can just make a new Deponia game and still survive from that. It's also worth pointing out that the only announced new Deponia game right now is going to be more of a survivalist player versus player experience in the Deponia universe, not a point-and-click adventure. Bethesda had, I believe, a May the 4th be with you, where you have them promoting mostly the Fallout TV series, but Fallout in general, Doom. Let's see if we can. This crab is probably from Fallout. That may be from Prey. I don't even know what that is supposed to be from, as far as a Bethesda or side Bethesda game. They're mostly tagging it Fallout here, though. And then, as we work our way backwards through the Helldivers 2 shenanigans, Helldivers 2 devs apologized after it was hit with 100,000 negative reviews, which we'll check what Helldivers is at. Let's see. Nope, that's not what we wanted. We wanted a link to the Steam page. We can go to SteamDB, though. I guess we can see right now it's at 67.07% as far as positive reviews, so fairly low. Let's just go ahead and look at the store page so we can see in more familiar terms. So in the last 30 days you have 58% positive, and it rounds up for overall now to 68% positive. Yeah, so they have gotten not only the most recent reviews but the overall reviews down to mixed, all because of the PlayStation Network login requirement. Pretty much, I guess if we do look here, you'll notice that the number of negative reviews so far have been fairly low for today, and then quite a lot of positive reviews. So it almost seems like there's a carrot and a stick approach here, which good on gamers for being coordinated enough to do that, and that it seems like they are actively trying to reward the game back up to a higher reviews because of the reversal decision. Of course, if PlayStation had just switched their opinion the next day or even the next day, they would have saved themselves significant numbers of negative reviews. I also want to point out that there is no asterisks anywhere here from Valve. Valve clearly not willing to say this is a review bomb by their standards, since this is content that would be changing. Let's see. Now the store page still says that it requires a third-party account, and I wonder how long it will take for that store page to change based on the most recent claims. Might be interesting to see what else Arrowhead has made. As far as Helldivers 1. Yeah. Very positive. Also an online co-op game though, so I'm not sure you could really play it. Magicka. Gauntlet. Yeah. It's kind of surprising they only have 4 games, but they're all so positively reviewed. Borderlands has released a new poster. With it we can see characters we've seen before, but there are some newer characters maybe in the background here. Yeah, this poster doesn't really tell me much other than the promotion line, tagline here is going to be Chaos Loves Company. That very likely won't be the entire name. It won't just be Borderlands, Chaos Loves Company. And we kind of know the color palette is going to be fairly bright in reds and colorfulness. Although I don't quite feel like this color palette is accurate to the video game. And Tiny Tina I definitely don't feel like is accurate, and honestly I don't feel like any of these characters are accurate, and it definitely feels like they have stunt cast hired a lot of people, which makes me suspect that they have probably spent more money paying the actresses fees than they should have, and that the movie itself may be pretty bad. Jack Black is listed here as a character. I think he voices Claptrap. Yeah, it'll be shocking if this movie comes out and is good. Although I'm not sure what you do after that. Anyways, let's say everybody loves the Borderlands movie. Greenlight a Borderlands 2 movie. Try to have a series, annualize it every year. That's about the best you could do. It kind of makes some sense. A Borderlands movie once per year in the summer versus a Saw movie once per year in the October Halloween months. Yeah, if you had something like that where maybe you could get the budgets low enough and still have a dumb fun action movie coming out in the summer every year, that would be something more than most movie theaters probably have now. Now ironically, I do think there's a decent chance that if you watch the Borderlands movie, you will have a good idea of what the Borderlands games are, and you probably would enjoy moving on to playing the Borderlands games if you had just watched the movie. That would be my guess as to how receptions will go, because I think the Borderlands movie is going to try to be much more in line and similar to what the video games are. I do question while playing Fallout New Vegas whether it wouldn't be a little bit better if there was a more kid-friendly comedic twist to the Fallout games, like a hard-edged, immature, realistic military game that just happens to be set in the Fallout universe. I just don't think you need that. I just don't think the fandom benefits from that, and that silly things probably should happen, because they probably cannot write intriguing missions and stories well enough in the Fallout universe to keep someone's attention. If they were really good writers in Fallout games, They would have made a Fallout game that was set in a vault for its entirety, and there would just be one big mystery or multitudes of mysteries. And there are some mysteries in Fallout New Vegas, but it's usually chalked up to, oh, I'm going to get a quest at some point. This is going where some NPC is going to explain to me what's going on and then tell me to go collect some item, and when I collect that item, then that will give us some note or have an NPC explain how we've resolved that mystery. Now, next, I can't blame Star Wars for celebrating Star Wars Day, but worth pointing out, I did follow Slick Deals to see if there were any sales around Star Wars Day. It's kind of the only thing that makes a lot of sense to buy on May the 4th is just any Star Wars games you haven't bought before. Yeah. I'm not even sure you can get like Star Wars movies or TV shows or discounts on Disney Plus. Apparently Fall Guys had a Star Wars crossover. Yeah, inherently as you scroll down here you have too many people getting retweeted for May the 4th be with you, and too much promotion between Legos and toys. You would think every May the 4th would be a great day to just have the Star Wars movies, the old Star Wars movies, back in theaters for one day, and that would be your big promotion, and maybe then you'd have some commercials in between each movie. Here you see them promoting May the 4th by highlighting Star Wars games, but I'm pretty sure some of these Star Wars games are not even things they would want to highlight. Like, I think this is a Force Unleashed image, and this might be from the original Star Wars Lego game and not the most recent Star Wars Lego game. And yeah, I guess I don't have that many May the 4th tweets. Twitter itself increasingly dying. That being said, I briefly clicked on a tab I had left open to Blue Sky, which was supposed to be the replacement competition to Twitter from the people who originally created Twitter, is the thought there. And I did not even let it load long enough to look at the feed on Blue Sky. So I really just don't have a lot of motivation for my reasons to use Twitter, which is very little, just to get video game news. I really don't have a motivation to move over to another app. I'm still not seeing websites have links to other services like Blue Sky or Mastodon or Threads. So if the companies don't know where to go, I'm not going to have that clue as far as where to go. This was some of the backstory I was trying to explain, where Helldivers 2 is now unavailable for purchase in 150 regions, Steam issuing refunds for the game regardless of playtime. 150 regions is quite a lot. You would be hard pressed to even list 150 regions in the world. Let's see. There seems to also be some leaks, although I feel like these leaks have come out before and then nothing came about from it. And it seems like this may be just rage bait articles more than anything else. But according to Video Games Chronicles, Activision rejected a Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 Plus 4 in favor of supplementary Call of Duty work. Vicarious Visions apparently pitched that after they were absorbed by Activision in 2022, and who's to say what Microsoft is doing any different, if they are doing anything different at all. You would think, though, if this is the first, frankly, I've even heard of Tony Hawk being under the control of Microsoft, if I had known that up until this point, and if I was in charge of Microsoft, I would have said, no, we're absolutely going to make a skating game. Maybe it's not Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk's pretty old. Maybe we put his name on the title but don't have him as a playable character, and maybe just make him a mascot type character. But there definitely should be some kind of skating game. You would probably investigate how much it costs to license the Tony Hawk name, and see if that's worth it. But clearly Microsoft could benefit from having a skating game. There are very few skating games out there. They may not be that popular, but just having one every generation would set you in a nice position. But yeah, so far as we know, Microsoft has done nothing to change what Activision is doing to run their subsidiary. And so as far as we know, Vicarious Visions is still just working on Call of Duty content, which maybe on the bottom line, financially, Microsoft is more than happy to say, let's just continue to make Call of Duty games and make money on Call of Duty. I assume at some point, Call of Duty will fall out of favor and stop making money. But you never know. It may just go on forever. You could have said the same, though, about Halo a decade or two ago, that it would have always made money. So LEGO Ideas, one thing I wanted to point out, they've updated their terms of service and kicked out any child under 16, probably for legal reasons, from the LEGO Ideas system. So that's why I had this tab open. It's not video game related, but it does lead to a greater element to recognize, which is that increasingly, because of laws and because of just concern about laws, kids are less and less capable of having accounts and interacting with the internet, even in fairly appropriate places like LEGO Ideas, where there wouldn't be anything offensive really at a LEGO Ideas website. Yeah, we are certainly seeing it on both ends, with Texas also passing anti-porn website laws and draconian rules, and other states passing anti-porn website laws, stopping adults from realistically being able to access those websites. Inherently, I wouldn't say that the internet itself is underregulated. I would say the internet itself is probably overregulated, although a lot of the regulations such as net neutrality are things that I think most people would agree with. What is underregulated are the massive 1% of websites that have been allowed to grow to far too large of positions and become monopolies, and have found a way to become a monopoly on the internet but not a monopoly everywhere else, and thus they can make loose arguments that they aren't actually a monopoly just because they only monopolize internet sales. Amazon.com, great example of that. It would make a lot of sense for Amazon.com to be broken up in several different factors. As far as the TV, the streaming, the book sales probably should be separate from grocery sales, should probably be separate from movie sales, things like that. But that's not video game related, so let's stay on topic more. Activision Studio Vicarious Visions, apparently, again I assume this is rumors that will go unconfirmed, was working on a Donkey Kong game. It's supposed to be a 3D platformer. When would this have been, though? Yeah. Yeah, somewhere before 2016. Which inherently means Vicarious Vision didn't even stop production because they were acquired by Activision Blizzard. So it's really questionable how actionable this kind of information is. Like, what can you really do thinking that in some possibly very pre-alpha early development Vicarious Visions before 2016 maybe was working on the Donkey Kong game? That means nothing really. It almost certainly means that had they been forced to finish the project that they were working on as far as the Donkey Kong game, it would have been terrible. Otherwise they wouldn't have scrapped something that was going well. And if we were to somehow magically be able to generate a list of every single game that's been scrapped pre-development, pre-announcement, it would just be a mile-long list of titles that sound intriguing but obviously would not have ever come to fruition. So it's just better to not know, really. It's not like Activision or Vicarious Visions today is making the pitch that they're going to make a Donkey Kong game for Nintendo, unless they do, which that would be an interesting follow-up to this, is if all of a sudden the Switch 2 gets announced and they just need so many games that they're partnering with Microsoft subsidiaries to make Donkey Kong games. We certainly could benefit from having a 3D platforming Donkey Kong game. We haven't had one of those in a long time. But there's a pretty obvious reason for that, in that anything good as far as 3D platforming has just been put into Mario games. And there isn't that big of a difference between a 3D platformer with Donkey Kong versus a 3D platformer with Mario. Perhaps there are slightly more collectibles in a Donkey Kong 3D platformer game. This family gaming database seems to be writing some very weird articles as far as Xbox games worth selling for your PlayStation 4, and they've made the exact same article as far as Switch games worth selling for your PlayStation 4. So one list here is sell your PlayStation, one is sell your Xbox, and I believe they have one even that says the exact opposite, sell your Xbox for a PlayStation. And I imagine they're going to just make a list that circles around. They say I have 10 advice lists like this. Let's see if that leads to anything. Inherently, I wouldn't recommend selling a console ever, to buy a new console or to buy games for a new console. It's a losing proposition, and I've never seen a game website promote this concept. And right now, if you were going to promote these advice articles, all of which seem like they're 2 years old, so they're pretty out of date, I would imagine, unless they're being constantly updated as far as the games. But yeah, if you were going to sell anything right now, your best bet would probably be to sell a Nintendo Switch. While it still may have some value, in the hopes that you could just not play any games until the Switch 2 is released, and that you're just going to be happy with that. I don't think that's a good move, though. I definitely can't recommend any of that. Now, the International Game Developer Alliance has put out a statement on a ban of non-compete agreements in the United States by the FTC. It's generally assumed that non-competes were never really legal, but that wouldn't have stopped a bad employer from suing you, and it certainly has happened in the past where bad employers have sued you and tried to use non-compete agreements as part of their grounds for suing former employees, which undoubtedly the International Game Developers Association is going to agree with the ban on non-compete agreements, and just the idea of having a free market in the sense that each employee is their own product who can sell themselves to any company willing to buy, aka hire them. I've said it in the past that any kind of limitation on an employee leaving and taking what they've learned from one job to the other should not exist, and every single employer should be terrified of the possibility that they would mistreat an employee and that they would quit and go work for their competitor. But that's not really the case. The one thing I think that's somewhat weird about this is it is the International Game Developers Association, so they also probably need to address whether there are any other countries that have non-competes or similar styles of contracts. There's a lot of contract law in particular that happens in other countries as far as working under contract that also could be addressed and talked about. But yeah, definitely feels like the IGDA wants to make themselves more important and just interject themselves into this conversation. And in fairness, this is a very reasonable place where they should interject their own opinions into the conversation. I question, though, if there isn't a low-level desire by the IGDA to become more relevant and self-promote themselves as much as possible to replace the ESA, which notably the ESA has not put out any statement similar to this, because the ESA is a lobbying group for the corporations, for video game companies, who would absolutely love to have non-compete agreements be legal, and almost certainly if you were to poll employees, you would probably find a significant number of game developer employees or game company employees have signed non-compete agreements either for their current jobs or previous jobs. And yeah, the non-compete ban was passed several days ago, and it's not like you have a huge uptick in people leaving their jobs for new jobs. I think we'll probably see some of that happen where it should have happened already, but the vast majority of people will just be too afraid to take a new job. There's a lot of danger in that. Even if you found a new job that would pay you better financially and in benefits, and maybe it's closer to where you live and just sounds perfect on the face of it, you just never really know once you get employed whether your coworkers are going to suck, whether the job is going to disappear and you're going to be fired in the first 60 days, or whether something is just going to surprise you that you can't just possibly know about. Moving on, Rebel Wolves, Konrad Tomaszkiewicz, I mispronounced that for sure. Apparently this is a guy who worked at CD Projekt Red, and he wants to avoid repeating his CD Projekt Red opening up his stream about his new studio and how he's using it to address prior allegations of bullying at CD Projekt Red. So I guess the allegations may be directly at this founder. Or maybe he left because he didn't like the bullying, if there really was bullying. Claims of bullying are fairly lightweight claims and not worth really paying too much attention to, considering in comparison you have claims of actual assault and both physical and sexual assaults happening at other companies, or accusations of that, and you have just downright illegal things happening at other companies. Like, yes, it is not appropriate to be bullied and harassed, and harassment, I think, is illegal in most places in a workplace. But yeah, if the worst thing you can say is my boss is a bully, well, that's probably the same thing almost every employee can say, is that their boss feels like they're a bully. This may be also he tells that working with a considerably smaller team will help him improve his behavior and have more empathy. So yeah. This may also be a GameDeveloper.com yellow journalism type article, and that they've taken an interview and cherry-picked some responses to really just talk about bullying allegations before. Which, okay. On the face of it, even if he's fully admitted to bullying his staff, it seems like he's only been accused of bullying staff. Yeah, no, he denied it, so they're bringing it up after he denied it. And then he also said he's working on himself to ensure it didn't happen again, which perhaps you shouldn't deny it and then say I'm working on myself, because that is sending mixed messages. The better thing is just to deny if you're gonna deny. But yeah, this definitely feels like a GameDeveloper.com article just to bring up bullying accusations, which certainly aren't going to go anywhere. Gamers are just not going to care that much. This is cancel culture type mentality at a time where cancel culture has long since died down and been replaced with anti-cancel culture mentality in most gamers' minds, I would suspect. If they have an opinion either way, I imagine the majority don't really care and have an opinion either way. Let's see. So here is the follow-up. Also, the Ghost of Tsushima studio says that the Steam version won't need a PlayStation Network account for single player. However, it will need one for multiplayer. So, Sucker Punch already coming out here and trying to address a controversy before it even happens. Just seeing how that went for Helldivers 2. And this definitely indicates that more than likely PlayStation had negotiated these requirements for PlayStation Network as the publisher, and PlayStation is going to be hard pressed to agree to get rid of those requirements for free, or get rid of them at all. And then we already talked about the U-turn, and I imagine Ghost of Tsushima may see a U-turn. Also, it'll be interesting to see if gamers can either pre-boycott or boycott Ghost of Tsushima on PC in the same way, and if it would have the same impact. Because in this case, people will just not buy Ghost of Tsushima if they're upset about the PlayStation Network requirement, and as such, Sony might be able to just excuse the game as having low sales for some other reason, unless gamers are willing to buy the game, review it negatively, and then demand a refund. And even if there's a lot of gamers that do that, I imagine it won't be anywhere close to the numbers of the Helldivers 2 negative reviews and refunds, because Helldivers 2 was available for, it felt like, months before the bait and switch happened, which effectively that's what it is, whether they meant to or not. Yeah. And more of these headlines and lists. Family Gaming Database feels like it almost makes sense, but also it still seems very poorly made as a database, as far as why are you suggesting for what I would assume is for kids, kid-friendly games, or more kid-friendly games like Spider-Man and everything, and then you have Last of Us Part 2 with a tattooed lady and a gun pointing at the screen. It is also, that did just remind me that Fallout New Vegas, and the Fallout games in particular, probably should have learned a lot from the Last of Us series, because those games are fairly similar in theme, and just like gameplay mechanics, and what could Bethesda have stolen as ideas from the Last of Us series to make a Fallout 4 or Fallout 5 better. Yeah, but this whole list makes no sense at all. It's just like, this is all the games they recommend, taking into no consideration any family friendliness about it at all. There you have Uncharted 4 Thief's End, where you have two dirty people seeming to about to kiss. And then here's Last of Us Left Behind, which, is that some kind of DLC? Yeah. There's just an inconsistent thing. It almost feels like the Family Gaming Database just wants to review, and this is probably the truth, they just want to review the most common familiar games for clickbait reasons, instead of focusing on what would be better. Inherently, there's probably thousands of small indie Steam Direct games that could be on this list that they're ignoring in favor of talking about PlayStation games that are AAA games and AA games. Maybe PlayStation Network doesn't have a lot of those small games though, so if this is specifically PlayStation games, maybe there's a lack of listing because of that. And then YouTube Gaming, pointing out on May 5th that it was 15 years ago to that date that Plants vs. Zombies came out. And then overall, they're just trying to stay relevant with May the 4th. And yeah, if I was to scroll back down here, I imagine there's not going to be anything really relevant. This caught my eye for a second in that they've just copy and pasted a bunch of different health potions from different games. I imagine this isn't even an image that they made, but maybe it is. Yeah. Take note that there is not a single case ever where YouTube Gaming says, hey, you know, we've got a YouTuber who has made some interesting video game content, check it out, or hey, we've added a new feature to YouTube that is specifically ideal for game content creators or viewers who want to see video game content on YouTube. I had a funny thought, and I don't think I could ever make content that was good enough to really justify doing this, but in the same way that Giant Bomb uses the phrase quick look, and now I feel like that is probably close to enough to be public domain that anybody can use that phrase. I was thinking, what if I just called these live streams X-Play? That would be really fairly over the line, though. And if I could make great content, I probably would do it. But nah, I don't think that would be worth it. There would be too many people that would be looking for old episodes of X-Play on YouTube and seeing my videos and getting upset by the bait and switch on it. I could call it R-Play for Rydo, but that is even worse because that is too close to the somewhat infamous visual novel Rayplay that was one of the first visual novels to be censored off of Steam because of its rape themes. So, yeah. And in fairness, if I was gonna try and copy X-Play, I'd have to do everything X-Play did, which was quite a lot. So that's not a realistic thing. Let's go through all the new games on Steam. I need to update some of this because, like, the warning may contain adult content is really unnecessary, and yeah, I probably need an intro interstitial screen like that anyways. In this case, it doesn't look like there's enough variety in the screenshot, so I'm going to say no. I didn't come back and try and remove the delay with the JavaScript injection I'm doing. I almost want to say yes to this, but weirdly, you have this inconsistent art style, and it does look like it's probably just an RPG game. Half RPG, half visual novel, with two art styles, so I'm going to say no to that. Here we have a decent enough looking Survivors game, but we can see it's also mixed, so we'll take that off the follow list. This art style would be a tough sell, so I'm going to say no. Bed and Beak Fist, we'll give that a chance. Yeah, this looks like it's just Dark Screenshot Syndrome. So I'm still not sure I've got the fall list working. I did put some extra effort into doing clips, so theoretically the clips would run. Dungeon Minesweeper. This seems like it's Minesweeper, but with a twist on it. Not sure I particularly would love the twist, but I'll give it a chance. Inherently, changing Minesweeper too much is probably not going to work. This feels like a game where it's a Mickey Mouse, you know, Steamboat Willie public domain game, which we definitely didn't see too many of them. This also doesn't look interesting though. Asian Foxes, but it's just a puzzle game. Feels definitely like it's trying to sell on lewdness too much. We have a mixed reviewed game. Legends of Aria from 2019. I'll give that a YouTube short even though it's mixed reviewed. And yeah. The delay is still too much. It is just easier for me to click instead of wait here a second and then let it go forward itself. And then it delays a couple seconds when I stop clicking. So it's like 1, 2, 1 Mississippi, 1 Mississippi. Yep. So there's several functions there. I have to investigate what needs to be changed as far as a value, and then inject new JavaScript so it would react the way I want it to react. So there's more work to be done there. And frankly, I would just prefer to play Fallout New Vegas. I would say at this point, my here is definitely an adult game with the ugly bastard tag, if that was a tag you could actually use on Steam. That's what they call it. Yeah, I've pretty much given up on doing anything more as far as coding with Steam. I never got around to programming one thing, and I never really fully tested and released the other thing. Those were definitely projects that I was planning on working on only when I was away from my computer, and it is not so much that I'm away from my computer as much as I am just sometimes getting distracted from making footage, which, by the way, playing Fallout New Vegas, I'm very inconsistently making links of episodes. Sometimes it's an hour and 30 minutes, sometimes it's 2 hours. Yeah. There is a small possibility as I get things scheduled to record that I would pull out my Steam Deck and play some games. It's worth pointing out that Proton version 9.0 was released, so major number increase as far as the Proton compatibility database and library and software. So even more games should be compatible or better compatible, and the GeForce Now streaming service has made a commitment to make it easier. I almost want to say yes to this, but it seems like it's just all over the place visually. So yeah, being able to stream some games directly to the Steam desktop mode and GeForce Now would be yet another way you could use a Steam Deck. But yeah, what mostly seems to be happening is that if I am, this is a French only, you don't see too many French only games. If I'm not doing anything on my computer making footage, then I tend to just pull out my cell phone. And I'm still doing too many Sudokus. There was one day where I knew I was going to be particularly busy, and I told myself I'm just not going to do any Sudokus today. Yeah, I'm still watching and trying to learn to be better at doing Sudoku variants. And it's taking up a bunch of time. Still watching a lot of YouTube. Still watching some Amazon Prime also. So I'm very much just working towards distracting myself instead of working on a more mentally draining project. I guess inherently that is the issue, is that if I'm going to be programming something, I'm going to be putting all my mental energy into that, and I'm not going to just do it for an hour and then be relaxed and ready to make footage of playing Fallout New Vegas in this case. So I kind of have to decide one or the other. Like I kind of have to have either a focus on making footage or a focus on doing some other side project that's going to inherently be less important to YouTube. Now at some point YouTube may not be a priority at all, and then I'd be focused on something else. Although I don't know what. It's definitely not the case that that I could just go and work some other job and that I'd be particularly capable of focusing in on that or working on that for like 8 hours, and I almost certainly wouldn't be happy about it if I was even trying that. YouTube does have that unique advantage of being able to take bathroom breaks whenever you need it if you have IBS, and fall asleep whenever you need to sleep if you have hypersomnia or insomnia. I heard a YouTuber talking about a game that looked very much like this. I think this is the game they were talking about. If that is the case, this is a Godot engine game that the YouTuber was talking about making. Visually, I'll say it doesn't look particularly great. And they were talking about how they were really struggling with the Godot engine to have different contrast ratios. They wanted a 16:10 and they just couldn't figure out how to do it, which I feel like they must have been making a mistake there. You can see Xbox controllers and PlayStation controllers are being supported. Yeah, and I really have no reason why I would promote this game other than perhaps it's slightly different looking. It's a slightly different type of game than what we've seen usually. If it is a case that everybody is having trouble with contrast ratios in the Godot engine, then that definitely highlights something they should work on, because it really shouldn't be that hard to adjust for contrast ratios or just have a dead zone view window where there might be some pixels on the left and right that are just never really that important because all the action is in the centering. Plushies from the sky. I'm going to give this a chance, but it's probably nothing. Okay. I'm still trying to get viewers. Inherently, I know I lost some viewers by taking Yu-Gi-Oh off of the titles, and so it may be months, could be years even, before I start to get viewers who will pop in and view these live streams and comment. So it may very well be a case where somebody says the music is too loud, or somebody says that the screenshots are switching too fast, which I'm not sure I'm really going to accommodate people who say the screenshots are switching too fast, because the whole point is I programmed them to switch fast. Here we can see Hades 2 is at 100% so far with only 26 reviewers. It is early access though, and I still not a huge fan of early access games. Sword and Bones 4 looks like an old game, but I'll give it a chance. We definitely are seeing too many games with card mechanics these days. Seems almost like there's an increased willingness to be lazy around action games. And here's a Skyrim clone showing the level of quality. You could make something like a Skyrim game without having a huge budget like Bethesda, which is not very high visually speaking. So that would be the new games, and so this would be the fallen games, and I didn't work on the fallen games list, so I don't have any fallen games to clean up. So then that will bring us to the SteamDB point. which I imagine not too much has changed. We've seen Fallout 4 doing fairly well. Helldivers 12 in the 12th spot. Helldivers 2 in the 12th spot. Fallout 76 is down to the 29th spot, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it just continuously fall downward. And New Vegas is in the 46th spot. So considerably fewer people chose to play New Vegas, even though it seemed to me like that would make the most sense as far as what you would want to play. Like Fallout 76 doesn't make sense because it's supposed to be right at the beginning after the nuclear fallout, so it wouldn't really connect to the TV series because it'd be a prequel to the TV series. And Fallout 4, I think, is the most farthest out story, so it'll be least connected to New Vegas, even if it is the most polished visually. I also think Fallout 4 may just be the way better with action, so maybe people figure that out. I imagine it is also just a case of Fallout 4 is promoted. But yeah, there's really no reason to play Fallout 4 right now with all the problems with its update that it put out. What I would want to see is Manor Lords and see if that's going anywhere. It's in the 22nd spot. That's been, I guess, the most recent game to be released. Yep. As far as my chart goes, we see Apex Legends bouncing up, Naraka Blade Point bouncing up, Stardew Valley still being strong and bouncing up, Call of Duty seems to be bouncing up, where other things are still trending downward. But yeah, I don't think any of the Fallout games even cross into a point where I could find them. Manor Lords is here. There should be a Fallout button. Here's Fallout 4. So Fallout 4 here, and then Fallout 4 here. So if you click on that, Fallout 4 also there. Yeah, my chart is yet another thing I still haven't worked on. As far as the Steam page, front page, Hades 2 getting that top banner promotion, and certainly is another thought as far as Baldur's Gate 3. Is Baldur's Gate 3 a fair game to compare to something like Fallout New Vegas? And does it potentially let you have a party of 3 other companions and play a much better, much closer to a Dungeons and Dragons style tabletop role-playing game experience, whereas the Fallout game series is some weird Bethesda creation that it is somewhat based on role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, but has been evolved into a weird monstrosity that does not really seem similar to JRPGs or Baldur's Gate 3 or any other Western RPG games. Like how much of the creation engine and the Gamebryo engine has just pushed Bethesda games to be known and feel like Bethesda games instead of looking and feeling like other games, which they could borrow / steal a lot of concepts and I think improve it. Second Project publisher sale up to 90% off of some visual novels like Clonade, which if you're going to play a visual novel, that's a good one. We can see Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons remake is 33% already. I don't know what the Invincible is about. Then you have Capcom Mystery Adventure Double Pack Bundle for half off. What is Rich Man about? Looks like maybe It's a Mario Party game, but it's mixed. And this looks like a resource management game. Seems like they may have expanded the number of games that are on sale too to like 4 tabs, where it feels like it was 3 tabs or even 2 tabs before. Both the newer games are on sale. I still haven't seen anything as far as the summer sale going on. I think I've been mistaken and thought that summer was technically coming a lot faster. Here you can see Hades themselves, which they've committed to not adding any more content to Hades 1, so now would be the time to buy Hades for $8.49. Puppet Master game is being rated very positively, even though all of the screenshots contain mature content. This Indica game also being rated very positively, and that certainly could be a sleeper hit, but I imagine it will just be a game that very few people ever give a chance to. Echoes of Plum Grove looks interesting also. But if we were to look at top sellers, looks like Hades 2 is still doing very well, and Helldivers 2 is still doing very well. But yeah, and apparently even more sales. It definitely feels to me like I probably was mistaken and thought summer was closer than it is, but I guess maybe it's a month or 2 away. Alright, well, let's go through the headlines. Really don't have that many headlines today, so today can be a shorter experience, which is good because we started later anyways. So we probably have talked about most of this already also. And from the looks of it, seems like I still need to work on my macro as far as making Steam links to games open, as far as what is being mentioned on Gematsu. I'm still not sure if that is working correctly or not. It might be, it might not. So what I have to do is keep an eye open to see if there's a game that has been mentioned on the Gematsu articles and headlines that we did not already see listed as far as Steam games that are coming out soon. Alright, but let's get through Video Games Chronicle first. Ghost of Tsushima Studio says the Steam version won't need a PSN account for single player. It will need one for multiplayer, however. Mortal Kombat 1's DLC character Homelander is shown in a new gameplay trailer. So here's Homelander smelling breast milk, baby's milk. That's his weird immature fetish in the TV show. Which, yeah. If Homelander was showing up in any other game than Mortal Kombat, there probably would be some bigger controversy around it. Although, the funny controversy now on Mortal Kombat 1 is just that it's not relevant and not interesting, which is a non-controversy, I suppose. PlayStation has U-turned after the Helldivers 2 Steam backlash and scraps the mandatory PSN account linking. Helldivers 2 backlash continued as Sony pulls the game from over 150 regions. Activision rejected a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4 in favor of supplementary Call of Duty work, it's been claimed. Activision studio Vicarious Vision was working on a Donkey Kong game, it's been claimed. Ouch, Helldivers 2 dev apologizes as it was hit with 100,000 negative reviews. The research firm reveals that the top grossing PC and console games of Q1 2024. I think we looked at this research firm, and the way they depicted it was difficult to follow and read just visually. And I question if the information is useful or accurate. Paladin Studios is shut down after almost 20 years. Xbox and Switch players get free Star Wars games trials. That is probably over now. No. Yep, it was running until the 5th of May. Today is the 6th of May. So that information is absolutely useless. So yeah, not that many stories really to even talk about. I guess the good news there is my macro didn't go backwards and open up a ton of old stories. Yeah. We still very much are seeing a pattern where nothing ever happens on the weekend, or nothing ever gets reported if it happens on the weekend. Let's go through the Gematsu articles now, and I don't have too many of those either. Hades 2 is now available on early access. Wizard with a Gun Better Together update launches May 13th, adds 4-player co-op. So if this game had a Steam link, there should have been a tab. Did we see Wizard with a Gun? I don't think we did. So I don't think my macro is working the way I want it to. Tranquil Island farming simulation game Star Sand Island has been announced for PC. It's not on the follow list, so I assume I haven't made a YouTube short on it. I don't feel like I've seen this either. Sword and Fairy N2 for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox One and Series launches in July. It's currently already available for the Switch and PC. Which I'm not sure if I ever made a decision on whether I want to promote things when they go to other consoles. I think I kind of do. That being said, the game has to actually be positively reviewed to really justify doing that. SteamWorld Heist 2 gameplay deep dive trailer is available on Gematsu. Serum launches in early access on May 23rd. And that just went straight to a video. That was not what I expected the Steam link to go to. Yeah. See, this is another game that could be very similar to something like Fallout, that I feel like you probably could get away with being more serious, whereas I think Fallout has already poisoned the wells with some of its silliness and its Fallout Shelter games, and the Nuka Punk theme itself is just a little silly. That even the music selection is fairly silly. Yeah, I just don't think Fallout ever should have been 100% serious, and I don't think it ever can be 100% serious. And probably should lean more into an action, comedic, almost Borderlands parody of what a military first-person shooter is. Don't go as crazy and as Borderlands, but meet maybe half as crazy as Borderlands. Realm of Ink launches in early access for PC on May 17th. This might be an interesting game, although it might not. Always a possibility. And then it looks like GameDeveloper.com has gone crazy and opened a ton of articles. I imagine a lot of these are things we've already talked about, so we'll try and burn through these headlines fairly quickly. Story Kitchen teams with DreamWorks Animation to adapt video games to film and TV. Beat Saber drops MetaQuest 1 support in November. Sony reverses its Helldivers 2 account linking requirement. Rebel Wolves Conrad Tomaskiewicz wants to avoid repeating his CDPR past. Nintendo hit 8,500 Yuzu repositories with a DMCA takedowns. These were forks of Yuzu, so easy for Nintendo to find them on GitHub. Helldivers 2 is going to make Steam and PlayStation account link mandatory by June. At least it was until this was updated and they made a reversal on that decision. Updated Gray Zone Warfare reaches over 500,000 sales in 2 days. Notably, not really talking about the sales after those 2 days. The IGDA Developer Satisfaction Survey highlights DEI deficiencies and crediting confusion. Local Thunk knew Bolertro needed to draw players in with poker. Pokemon Go co-developer Very Spaceship lays off its staff. Paladin Studio laid off 45 workers and shut down. The former Zynga COO Matthew Bloomberg is the new CEO of Unity. And then these are really old headlines. Report Take-Two shutting down OlliOlli World developer Roll 7. We assume if these reports go out and they don't deny them that they're true after a while. Clockmaker dev Belka Games cuts 20% of the staff. Skybound adds Wandery and Omaze alums to its executive team. And then LinkedIn launched 3 games to play while job hunting. And see, I just don't know what went wrong with the Steam, the GameDeveloper.com macro, that it went that far back. It really shouldn't have gone that far. Also, I'm not sure why the follow list cleanup box here is out of order, because we are at the end of the show. So, anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, and keep on watching. Thanks.